spending more, controlling more, regulating more, redistributing more, all of which involves less freedom. It's not that the government takes from Peter and gives to Paul. It's just that the government taxes Peter and takes away not just the money from Peter, but the ability to make the choices of how that money will be spent. And it becomes the government that decides which Paul will get it and for what purposes. Peter is denied the discretion and the opportunity and the liberty and requirement of responsible decision-making to decide how to best spend his money for good purposes and bad, for personal purposes and perhaps charity. Those decisions are narrowed or taken away from him, and the government then decides who will get the money. And for what purposes, and under what terms. As I've said earlier, whenever the government says that it's going to do something for you, it must imply, as the other side of that coin, that it has the police power to do things to you. You're going to get government health care, they will decide the quality, form, and degree of health care. You want retirement pensions from the government, they'll decide how much you get taxed, when you can be eligible to retire, and what the payment will be, if any, that you get from the government out of that pension. You want the government to supply housing? You don't pick your place of residence. The government taxes you, so you have less financial opportunity and choice in any private housing market. And now the government says this is the kind of housing you'll be in, of this much space, with these facilities and conveniences and amenities, in this part of town. You want government to create jobs? Then the more that the government taxes people away and generates government jobs means narrowing of the private sector competitive opportunities to find employment. And more what the government wants to employ people for, which may have very little to do with people want to have produced out there to satisfy their consumer needs. That is, jobs that are worth it and do something productive and useful, and among which individuals can choose and select, given their preferences and desires of how they would like to earn a living. I know most of you have gone through government-funded schools, and I didn't talk about this in the lectures. But to be honest, I consider it a great misfortune that you have primarily been dependent upon government education. I think that taking this different systems approach, all things considered, in an imperfect world with imperfect people, what system would better educate people? What system would give them more competitive alternatives? What systems would generate the most innovative and creative attempts to improve the quality and types and methods of education? A government monopoly managed educational system or a competitive educational system? Where there's that same responsibility that I talked about last time. If you don't give the education that the parents and the students consider to be good, helpful, and desirable, you're going to lose customers coming to your school. And even if you say, but that person will have gotten through and now he's not disappointed. They got his money word of mouth. Oh, don't send Johnny to that school. My Sally graduated from there. You know what? It really didn't help her that much with a job afterwards. Really? What do you think would be better school? Well, I know Bob sent his son to. Right? Same way with other products in the market. Does that mean that everyone would get a stellar, hypothetically perfect education, all knowing, all knowledge? No. We're talking about relative better in giving people choices and control over these decisions themselves and setting the market to work to say, send your kid to this school. Look at our curriculum. Show how we've devised ways to stimulate your children to learn more, to learn better, to have a better track towards a better career, whatever it may be, compared to, well, this school. Because you choose, you decide, you select. I'm not saying that you per se had a bad education. I don't know. I went to public schools myself in New York when I was young, and then in Los Angeles for high school. Graduated from Hollywood High, in Hollywood, California. But I do know that looking over the educational system as a whole, all things considered, taking the long view, education would have been, and could be, and should be, far better than it is. And that is made possible when you set the profit and self-interested motives of the market to work. Because when the government taxes you to pay for education, and the teachers virtually can't be fired, and the curriculums are set by the monopoly department or board of education, where's the innovation? Where's the competition? Where's the incentive? Where's the motive? Even if it's not eliminated, it's certainly significantly diminished. The free society is one that opens these vibrant opportunities, unimaginable opportunities, chances of possibilities that you can't even think about or imagine. That's why we want competition. Earlier in a lecture, second lecture I guess yesterday, I referred to competition as a discovery procedure, a process. We want the competition precisely because we don't know what the competition will result in. That's part of the purpose of competition. If we ran a foot race and we knew ahead of time who was going to come in first, who's going to come in second, who's going to come in third, the place positions, the relative times, why bother holding the race? It would be redundant, wouldn't it? Why get exhausted running the race if you already knew how everyone's going to run in the race? Might as well just sit it out and just take the glory without putting your foot on the track. We hold the race precisely because we don't know this. And merely because Bob won the race last time, and even won a second time, doesn't mean he's going to win the third time. New people enter the race. Age catches up with people. New ways of training and exercising. Different running clothing to reduce wind resistance are developed. All of this should work in a simple thing like improving and to run the foot race better without any with no certainty as to who's going to win the race. That's why we hold the race. That's the race of life. Whether it be education, or intellectual pursuits, or scientific discovery, or the improvements in the marketplace, or just discovering who you are and what you could do, and what potentials are in yourself. That is why the open competitive society is desirable. So you can be everything you can, and the rest of us can benefit from it. Just as you benefit from all the discovered potentialities of every other free person in those networks and arrangements and exchanges and associations of the marketplace and out of the marketplace. It's not a utopia, it's not unimaginable. There were times when governments told you what religion you had to practice. There were governments that told you couldn't be free because you had to be a slave. There was a time when government regulated and controlled far more of economic activity in Western countries than they even do now. And slowly but surely those things were lifted. People were free to choose their faith. People would choose to live their lives without being a slave. People were liberated from various controls and regulations to make these private choices themselves. And what did it generate when it was done in that earliest century of the late 18th and then throughout the 19th and early 20th century? A world of greater industrial prosperity and innovation in standards of living than ever experienced before. That is what a free market society does. To give you one idea of this, if we could have some measurement of standard of living, however crude and rough, and we had time on the horizontal axis, and here we have, let's say, 100 BC, right? 100 years before Christ. And here we are in 2010, and here is 1900, here is 1800, here is 1700, and so on. What we would discover that by some rough and ready, however crude measure of standards of living for people around the globe, this is what it would have looked like. Like that. Through most of human history, to phrase the famous, slightly abridge the famous phrase from the British philosopher Thomas Hobbes, human life was nasty, brutish, and short. Most people lived barely above subsistence. There was a small little group of monarchs and aristocrats, noblemen, and church officials in Europe, the hierarchy of the church, who lived a slightly better life. But for the broad mass of the population,